Leads me to the introduction of the only living superhero in my life, my mentor. Listen, I'm influenced by people who can walk the talk, as we talked about today in the theater, and I am influenced by mentors that I can just try to live up to. And I have, in some of my books, I reference those who have influenced my life. A lot of them are fictional characters. Robin Hood, I love what he stands for. Willy Wonka, I love the brilliance in the marketing of Willy Wonka. And then there's Rich DeVos. Willy Wonka, Robin Hood, and Rich DeVos. Now Rich, I put a coat on tonight because I knew if I didn't, he'd make fun of the clothes I was wearing. So I kind of dressed up a little bit for you tonight. He always makes fun of the color of my clothes and my jackets, but all kidding aside, I cherish the time that I get to spend either in front of him at a basketball game or on the way to a basketball game, at his house, and when I don't have him in person, reading his books. And on my website, under recommended reading, all of the books that Rich has ever written are referenced there. Very short little reads. His new one, 10 Powerful Phrases for Positive People, is one that I strongly encourage you to read. And so there are not a lot of people that are living that influence the way I live my life. And this is the prime example. The king of capitalism and the really the founder, in my eyes, of free enterprise, at least in this generation, is Rich DeVos. So let's give him your undivided attention.
Put it in my pocket down here. Let me put this on right. Thanks. Well, good evening, everybody. Excuse me, Frank. Break your leg here on my new stick. I'm really not lame. I just fall over. So the doctor said you better carry a stick. Anyway, we're happy to be here with you. I just came down from Michigan yesterday, and so Frank asked if I'd be available to come on over and chat with you a little bit and try and at least listen, because you can talk to me and talk about things you're concerned about or interested in. Frank says you ought to talk about the economy and where we're going, and I wish I knew. I was speaking the other day, in fact, from down here in Lauderdale the other day with a Japanese group of Amway people. And the guy that introduced me said, why did you start Amway when times were so bad? Because these were bad times in Japan, and just like they are here. And so he said, why would you start a business in those times? I said, well, first of all, I didn't know they were bad times. You know, you don't know whether it's good or bad. You just know it's now. This is your time. Somebody said, well, I got to wait for better times. I said, well, just go ahead and wait. Next thing you'll be old like I am. You know, there is only one time, and that's now. And this is your time. And you've got to figure out what to do with it. And I know there may be better times to invest or not invest or to buy or to sell and all that. But your life is moving. And moving faster than you know. And you'll wake up one day like I am and realize you can't hop, skip, and jump and run on the beach like you used to, or sail around the world like I once did, and you can't do a lot of things. But this is the only time I have. So I got to live it to the fullest and do all the things I can do and to enjoy life as God has given it to me. Now, time is really all you have. And so this is your moment to do with what you can with the circumstance that surround you. I am a Christian, so I live sometimes by a different time clock than maybe you do. See, I accept the fact that I am in God's hands. Now, this is not a theological argument with you. It's just a statement of what I believe and where I'm at. And so, it's important in life that you know where you're at with God, so that you can be knowing that you are as I believe, under His control, and His hands are upon me, and I got to do the best I can to live up to what He expects of me. Now that's what God has asked me to do. That doesn't make me perfect or better. I wish I was as good as Frank thinks I am, but see, I know what kind of a sinner I am. I know all the dumb things I've done, and I know all the bad things I've done. But I also know that God forgave me and lets me start each day with a clean bill of slate because of Christ who saved me. So that's just how you live your life. You may be an atheist, you may not believe any of it, that's okay. I respect you for what you believe. I'm just telling you, I live in that world. And therefore my remarks are kind of come from that world. And so I'll forgive you and you can forgive me if you like, that I offend you by that. But that's okay. I'm not offended by where you come from or what you do. Therefore, there is an awareness of this time that you're in and conditions that you're in and good times or bad times. We never really paid much attention to it. People say, how'd you get to be successful? And I say, well, I don't know, we just went to work every day. And some days we didn't do anything. Some days nothing happened, nothing moved forward. Some days a lot of things moved forward, but we just had to go every day and see what we could do and try and make our business go. When we started in our business life, we were a couple of guys who came out of the military. I had $700 and my partner threw in about $700. His father signed his note for a loan to buy one airplane, a little Piper Cub, and we were in the aviation business. Neither one of us knew how to fly. Everybody says, well, why would you go in that business? Well, we were both in the Air Force. We thought everybody's going to have an airplane after the war. There was such a powerful, positive feeling in our country after the war ended. You're all too young. You would have no sense of it. I don't know what war you're going to have to live through. You've lived through some already. Ours was a world war where the whole question of whether we would live and survive as a nation was at stake. And I pray you never lived through that kind of a war. When we went to the military, it wasn't that you had an option. You all went. Everybody went. You wanted to go. The people who were unhappy were the people who couldn't go in the service, because they knew that if we lost this war, Hitler would be here. Now, I came to realize that later on when we had a company in Germany, and the man we had hired to run our German company, and one day we were driving to go to a meeting, and he says, you know, he says, I was in Hitler's youth corps. Well, I said, oh. And he said, I was being brought up to be a commandante in cities like Grand Rapids, Michigan, where you live now. And that's what I was prepared for and being trained to do, was to take over that city. Now that just gives you some idea of how far down the line they were with their planning and what was going on in the world. So when you talk about good times, those are not very good times. But everybody pulled together and fought a war, and we won, and everybody was pretty excited. Today, the Amway company operates in all those markets that were once our warring enemies. One of our biggest and fastest growing markets today is Russia. Our largest market today is China, where we do in excess of almost $3.75 billion worth of business over there every year. We have millions of people involved. We have a big factory there, and I was known as a guy who talked about free enterprise. I'm a free enterprise guy. I talked about why free enterprise was better than communism or socialism or everything else in the world, and I can give you that speech anytime you like, because I've given it so many times. And I gave it at times when people were down and worried about the future of this country as well, after the war. And the speech was called Selling America. At that time, Cuba was knocking on our door with missiles. And the military was here in South Florida and preparing for an invasion from Cuba. Those were your times. These were times not too long ago. And so the need for all of us to accept the times we're in and deal with them are vital for us. There are plenty of people who want to do us down, and they're sometimes right here at home because they don't stand up for the things of freedom and free enterprise and capitalism that we think are vital for our success. It was and is my conviction that the wealth of our nation is because God chose to bless us. But when America was formed, when our founding fathers set us up, they set us up against the King of England, who had said, the government will decide what taxes you pay. We will just decide what we're going to take from you. And George Washington said, no, we're going to have a say. And so George Washington became the father of our country. He was the greatest thing about George Washington was that he not only fought the war, he was the first president, but he did, I think, 2 terms, and then he quit, and he said, well, I go home. I'm going back to my farm. Now, we do it now, but we say your term is up, and you got to go out. But you have to be concerned always with people who don't want to go out. And like Chavez and some of the other people in our country today, not in our country, but in nearby countries in Central America, they intend the guys who are running them to stay there forever. And so Chavez changes the rules so he can stay there forever. But if we're going to stay free, it will be a war that you're going to have to fight for and stand up for and take a position on. So now that's got nothing to do with what Frank asked me to talk about. Other than the economy and the times you are in, and that it was in such times when things got bad that Hitler took over Germany. There was a lot of inflation in Germany. It took a barrel of money to buy a loaf of bread, they used to say, because of the erosion of the value of their currency, because of the way Hitler had spent it. In fact, before him, the people had spent it. And so Hitler came in to save Germany and protect its freedom, and became one of the bad dictators of the world. I lived through the times of Hitler and Mussolini, who was a small player, but you had the guys in Japan, you had the guy in Moscow, we had Mao later on in China, who killed 50 to 60 million people because they didn't agree with him. And when he would march from his great march to take over the country and go through these towns where the top real estate guys were and the leaders in the community, he would just hang them in the central square because he didn't want anybody in the town who would stand against him. And so he just killed 40 to 50 million people, casually, without any choice, without anybody's opinion but his own, because he wanted to take over, which he did. Now, I live under that system when I do business in Japan. But I accept the fact that I can be thrown out of Japan at any time. I mean, out of China at any time. We do operate in Japan as well. But it's just I remember the day after we built a big factory in China when we got a big dividend check we'd taken out of China, and my partner and I said, wow, we're even. We got all the money out of Japan that we put in there, I mean, out of China that we put in there. Now if they kick us out, we're even at least, because we're going to play on their money from now on. But you live in that sense of fear even today. They just decide you're out. But they don't like your kind of business. These good times for you, these are your times. Now, I wrote this book because it was a speech I'd given and some of you, I've seen the book around a little bit. I recommend it to you. I had done a few other books, and my public relations gal said, "You got to do another book." And I said, "No, I'm too old to do another book. I'm in my 80s now." And you know, everybody said all these things. There's nothing new to say. She said, "Yes, but the difference is that if you say them, there will be some new people who will read them. And therefore you do it even if it's old stuff." And so they took this little speech I'd given on phrases that I used in building my business that might be helpful to you in building yours. We're going to believe that our freedoms are going to be maintained, and you and I are going to have to fight to protect the intrusion of government on our rights to run our businesses in the best way we can. I don't know whether they're going to tell you how much money you can make next year, or whether they don't like the percentages you operate under. But you're going to have to get together and fight it when they try it. Because they are already doing it to the bankers, as you know. And that's just another step in their process of controlling people who achieve. Frank and a lot of us in this room, we're all in favor of people achieving. The better you can do, the more we like it, huh? But not everybody likes that. And so the Christian, the Old Testament concepts of coveting and of jealousy are primary sins that I experienced and you experience. Whenever you achieve, somebody else has demonstrated to be less of an achiever. And so their resentment and jealousy gets up. And as that goes higher, and as you go higher, that gets higher. So as you move ahead, watch how you conduct your prosperity. Don't talk a lot about it. Enjoy it, and build up others, and be a giver like you are when you come here. Anyway, the phrases in the book that it's a little book called 10 Powerful Phrases for Positive People. The PR gals, oddly enough, I do have an agent in Hollywood, and he said, "I'll shop it, and I'll see if I get anybody who will want to print this speech." Yeah, hard to believe, isn't it? And he, thanks, and he shopped it. And this publisher said, "I like it." But I had 6 phrases that I used. And they said, "You got to have 10 phrases because 10 sells better." So we now have 10 phrases in the book. The concept of the speech and of the book was that as we prosper, that we try to bring up as many other people as we can. We don't try to be higher than or better than. We believe that everybody can. And therefore we have to become cheerleaders. And that's the object of the book, how to teach people how to be cheerleaders. There is good in everybody. You have to look for it harder sometimes. Some people are good looking. But to no credit of theirs, they just happen to have good looking parents. You know, so don't get your head up in the air or, you know, too high, because you didn't have anything to do with it. And as I say to my grandchildren, you have to carry the burden of born into the family of wealth, okay? Now, it doesn't make you any better than anybody else. You didn't have anything to do with it. You're stuck with it. But that means you have to have a higher level of responsibility because of it. Not just the license to go ahead and spread it around and tell about how great you are because you inherited some money. That's not a license to do that. It is a responsibility to try to lift up others. So I want you to become cheerleaders with me, or my word is life enrichers. And this book is how to be a life enricher. I'm not going to go through all of it. I'll just give you a couple phrases from it. And the first phrase I put in the book was, "I'm wrong and I'm sorry." Because they are the hardest words and the hardest phrases for you to learn. We are all wrong sometimes. We all make mistakes, and we are all sinners. Okay? You got to get that through your head, because otherwise you think you are just better than they. You're not any better than they are. You've learned some things, you've applied yourself, and you work harder. But there are a lot of people in life who've worked hard, and it never fell together for them. They went to work every day, and they did what they were asked to do, but they never were able to move beyond that. I don't have the reasons for that. God in His great wisdom determines that. You are where you are because God chose to bless you as He has chosen to bless me. So I have nothing to get cocky about. So I want to just do what I can to encourage others to do all they can with what they have, and you can do with phrases. So first of all, learn to say I'm wrong. And I attach it to the second phrase, which is I'm sorry. They just go together. I had a doctor come up to me the other day, and he said, I had an associate of mine that I had a bitter disagreement with 10 years ago. And he wrote me a Christmas card. And on it he had that he was wrong and he was sorry. He said he had read my book and he realized he had to let me know. Well, he said I immediately called him, we went to dinner, but for 10 years we hadn't spoken. All because somebody couldn't say, I was wrong and I'm sorry. Now this is a simple phrase, isn't it? But he couldn't say it for 10 years. I remember one time my wife was going to get cataract surgery, and I said, well, you can go in it. In those days, it was a newer operation, and they can go in the night before and get prepared for it, and then do it, and stay overnight if you like. And she decided she was going to stay in, go in the night before, and I said, oh, you don't have to do that. You got to pay for another night's place in there, and you can just go on in and get it done and get out of there. And I said, well, I'm going to watch the operation. So I talked to the doctor, and he said, yeah, you can watch. So I sat at the end of the magnifying glass, and I watched the operation, and the tension and the anxiety that were going on was beyond me. To see the magic of cutting inside an eye, removing a lens, quietly inserting another, vacuuming it out so there's no junk left in there. There is a little vacuum cleaner they use for that, to clean out the inside of the eyeball. Sew it back up. And I got back up to the hospital room where my wife was now, and I said to her, Helen, I'm sorry. I really didn't have any idea the anxiety that was going to go in your mind and you had to go through to get this done. And she said, I don't think I've ever heard you say that before. And I couldn't remember ever having apologized, despite all the dumb things I'd done. The book will tell you some more illustrations about it. I'm wrong, and I'm sorry. My youngest son came home late one night, later than he was supposed to. He was on a 12 o'clock curfew, and I was up and waiting. 1 o'clock came, and later, and by this time you've got him in the hospital, you're ready to call the police, you're pretty mad, and you're got your speech all ready for him, and he had listened to this talk, and having heard me a few times, he walks to the door and says, hi Dad, I'm wrong and I'm sorry. Now what do you do? Huh? And you see immediately that the speech is gone, all the arguments are gone, all the tension is gone, all that stuff just disappeared in the twinkling of an eye. Because somebody could say they were wrong and that they were sorry that you didn't call. Now, when we were young, we didn't have telephones hanging in our pockets. So we had better excuses. But it illustrates for you how quickly you can solve an argument, a big disagreement, even if you don't even really think you might all be all wrong. Just say it anyway and get it over with. Because you probably got some part to do with it. But Take the phrase and learn to use it. It will change how you live at home. Your children will have a new relationship with you when you learn to say it. And they will learn to say it. And it will improve a whole lot of things in your house, and in your life, and in your office. Realize that you and I mess up a lot. And then move on to the positive ones. And I can dig some out and try and read one of them. But they're all like, since I'm going to stop here and you're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about, they go like, you can do it. I believe in you. I'm proud of you. Thank you. I need you. I trust you. I respect you. And I love you. 10 simple phrases that built the whole world of Amway. You might not believe that, but it really did. I spent my life as a cheerleader going around the world telling people about what they could do. Telling them, you can do it. I'm proud of you. I believe in you. When they want autographs, they would say, I can do it. Say, you can do it, and then sign it. They just wanted it in writing from me, that reassurance that we all need all the time. Every time I make a speech, I come home on the way, and if my wife doesn't say something funny, I say, well, was it okay or what? You know, say something. No, she said, you were great tonight. I said, well, at least you could have said so. Well, she said, you're always good. I said, no, I'm not always good, but, you know, relatively, you know, just give me hey, good job. That's all I got to hear. I can hear it once or twice. It's okay. You can say it twice that I did good. You never can have somebody tell you did good enough, can you? And so you have to learn to repeat it. When people would write me notes, and sometimes they write and say, well, my son just became an Eagle Scout. And I had my little pad of paper, and I write back and say, oh, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of your son, and send it back. Bang. I rarely ever dictated a letter. Early days I did. In fact, when the company was little and you had to communicate a lot and I dictate letters, and one night I got home after being in the office and dictating letters and said, Lord, we thank you for this food. Amen. Period. New paragraph. You know. But I'm proud of you. So I signed, I'm proud of you. And they would stop to me years later and say, I still have it hanging on my refrigerator. Because they hear it so seldom. For a while I started a campaign. In fact, I still do it. My secretaries do it. We read the paper every day and we pick out the stories of people who are doing good things in their community. And so we send them a book, little letter in it, congratulating them for their achievements, the things they've done, and off we go. I meet those people on the streets of my hometowns where I am. They say, I got one of your books. And I say, oh, you got the letter, then you must have done something great. Tell me about it. And then they start to tell me what they have done. That's so important. To let them tell you what important thing they did. They say, well, I'm a part of that thing that Frank does, caring for those people in Haiti. I'm a part of that. It's important that if I meet you, you tell me that. We can rejoice together with what you're doing and we are doing. Because we need to help them a little bit too, to try and make that all work. I read you all the phrases. I'm going to not go over them again. My father, when I was a young man, said to me, get in business for yourself. He'd always wanted to be in business for himself. He never achieved it. He always wanted it. And so that's all he talked about. When I was in high school, I met my partner of a lifetime in business. And while we were in high school, all we talked about was what kind of business we were going to get in. We never talked about what college we were going to go to. We just talked about the business we were going to get in. Because of his encouragement. And he had another word. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Always, you can do it. Not a big phrase. But if you're a little insecure, it's a big phrase. And so to the people you work with every day, and they're a little doubt, and they just lost a sale, they say, oh, it's just one of many, you're going to go by, I trust you, I believe in you, it's going to work out. Times change. I've been through those days. You can do it. And with all the millions of people we involved with in the Amway business, that's how we built it. By telling them they could do it. The business we're in is a matter of encouraging others to achieve. You have associates you work with who need your words of encouragement. So take the book, go buy the book, it's okay. If you want to wait a little while, it'll be out in paper, it might save you a couple of bucks. But in the meantime, you're going to miss some opportunities to learn from that book and impact your life. I have many letters already. I gave this book to Bill Clinton the other day. I'm on a board that he's on, or he's a part of, the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. And I gave it to him at dinner, and he said, I'll read it tonight. He came back down the next morning, and he said, everybody should read this book. This book is terrific. He said, I didn't get quite through it. He said, I fell asleep, and I didn't get the last 2 chapters, but I will. I talked to him again recently, and he said, I still love that book. He said, that's a great book. Anyway, it will impact you for good. Not complicated, not sophisticated. Some people say they read 1 chapter every night. Some people have their grandchildren that when they go to bed and they pray with them sometimes, and they just say, well, you read this chapter tonight and we'll talk about it a little bit. And that becomes their kind of devotion as they talk about it. But it's a book that will improve your life. My life is pretty simple. I didn't go to college, but I had great mentors and teachers and my parents and my family and my partner that we encouraged each other and we kept going when the times were tough. And when the times were tough, we just fought it through and kept going. We've had wars with the government of England that tried to throw us out. We fought wars with the Federal Trade Commission. We've had wars with the government of the communist country of China and Russia. We have to fight with them all the time because they want to say, oh, your guys are making too many claims. You're telling people they can make money. Well, we got a lot of people making a lot of money. Thousands of people making a lot of money. But they are afraid of telling people they can make money because maybe some won't. Well, that's true. But some will. But the mentality of the socialist mind is that if some can and some can't, then we don't talk about it at all. And that is the end of what free enterprise is all about. And that's why we got to keep talking about it and defending it and supporting organizations that do. Anyway, Frank says, be quiet and talk about anything you want to talk about.
Okay, so let's take advantage of the opportunity.
Down to take questions?
I don't care. No, I'll stand here for a little bit. We're okay. I'm in the grass here. We're in the weeds.
This is your chance to ask whatever's on your mind of this brilliant mind.
Yeah.
So and then to make sure you enunciate as loud as you can, and if you can't hear it, I'll repeat it. So Philip, stand up.
Bad news. Anyway,
Yeah, Vince is good.
who's Vince?
Carter.
Oh yeah. I was gonna ask. I have a caring heart, and I want to bring my friends along with me for the ride. And Frank had talked about the importance of a team, and I can see the potential in my friends and the people I want to do business with. But sometimes, because of the economy or whatever circumstances they are, I can't get them to see what I see in them. And how do you take a horse to the water and make them drink?
I don't. I don't try to make a horse go to water and drink. I do everything I can to encourage them, and then I move on. It's their life, and I can't waste my time worrying about it. If they don't want to do something for themselves, I can't do anything for them. They have to take the lead, and all you can do is make them aware of the things they're going to miss and the fact that they're committed to their fate, then they're stuck with it. But that they don't have to be there, that no matter what, you're going to be their friend. That your relationship will go on. You're not going to bug them anymore. But when they get ready, you're here to help them. But I'm not going to make a fool of me or of you. These are decisions you have to make in your life. And sometimes it's just better you leave it there. It's sort of like trying to push your religion on other people. Tell them what you believe. And say, I hope you would come to know it because of the peace and comfort it gives you. And then leave it. They have got to come back with you, that the Lord will touch their heart to make them want to move. And so I'm not a master of other people's lives. I'm only an encourager. They are in charge. And sometimes for some people, they're in the right place for where they are and for who they are. And I just go on loving them and be with them, whether they're relatives or friends. And we have a potluck group that Helen and I have been with ever since these are a bunch of girls she knew when they were in grade school. Some of them do well, some of them, their family, their husbands never done real well or whatever, but it doesn't matter. We all have potluck dinners, and sometimes we all bring something and we eat them and enjoy each other's company, and when we can help them, we have to, and we do, and that's okay. You know, the Lord puts us in here to do different things. I got a lot of people who are ministers and preachers, and you know, I'd like to have them do better in their churches, but they are who they are, and no matter how much encouragement I give them, they can't seem to do the things I think you need to do to get ahead. And so the Lord's got His hand on them just as He has on me. So you and I got to be encouragers, but we got to be respecters at the same time. So move on with your life. Move on.
So what do you do with the feelings of cognac make you see what I see?
What do I do with them?
Yeah.
I just go on loving them and help them when I can. And when they want my help, then it's time for them to ask. I'm not going to bug them anymore, because that becomes a problem for them. You and I are not in charge of their life; they are. And you know, you and I are bringing in people into our businesses, and they go ahead, or they do a little, or they don't do anything, or they never go out and make a call, and you know, they don't even do the first thing to get ahead. They won't even read a book you give them. Well, go on loving them, but move on. Pass it on. Move it on. Pass it on. It's just, life is too short to sit and argue with them.
One over here, right?
Yes.
Gary.
As the leader of your company, what was one of your greatest challenges that you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
The greatest challenges we've had to fight in our business are, we were accused of fraud at one time by the Canadian government. We didn't think we'd done anything wrong. We had been dealing that way with them for 17 years. They'd audited our books for 17 years, and they always said it was fine. And then we got a new government in there, a socialist government in the Canadian government at that time. Trudeau was his name. And he didn't like us because we were capitalists, and we talked about it. And we extolled the virtues of it. And so he found out that the way we paid it was all to do with the taxes that are paid on transfer taxes from one country to another. And we owned the company in both countries, and so we would transfer it at what we did in every other country in the world. But in their little fine print, they had a little deal that if you owned both companies, then you didn't pay that kind of tax. You had to pay a tax after you paid all your employees, and after you paid your distributors. That was the transfer price, like 3 or 4 times, you know. Well, it was so obviously unfair and wrong that we felt we were doing it right, and we were consistent with it, and the people in that we had talked to said it was okay, the way we did it. But he got mad at us, and so they filed his charges against us, and they wanted to put us in jail, and those were exciting days. And you know, finally we found one of our associates who said, I'm going to go work on it. This is no longer a legal problem, it's a political problem. And he says, if you can avoid it, don't ever get into a pissing contest with the government. So that's probably a good idea. And stay away.
If you want to ask, go ahead and stand up.
Mr. DeVos, I've read your books, and I've always been seen you as a great mentor as a business in the business world and also as a personal life. And you've made a large impact in my life and how I see what I can do in my life. But what really impacted is your thoughts on free enterprise, and I hope they're very true. What do you think this country needs today to do to get out of where we're at to further the development of free enterprise and bring this country out of where it's at?
I hate to say we got to do what I'm just telling you to do. We got to raise the esteem of people that they are able to do things for themselves. The culture we are being taught today is that we are hopeless and stupid and unable to take care of ourselves. They don't quite say that to you, but they say, well, we have to pay your medical bills and we have to take care of it because you're not smart enough to do this. Well, if they can pay my medical bills and I still don't know enough to go to the hospital, I'm still going to be sick. I finally am responsible for my conduct and what I eat and whether I exercise and all the other things that I have to do. This country became great because the people of America said, I can do that. And so I was trying to think of the illustration I had. I used to use it all the time. Is that in this country, and the founding fathers said we knew that we were sinners, okay? None of us was perfect. So therefore, don't trust the bastards. Now that's pretty blunt the way he said it. I just repeat now. But because what he's saying is the guys that head government are no smarter than you are. They're sinners just like you are. You see, don't go on believing that any one group has more brains than all the rest of us. That's where the fallacy begins. You get an elitism going, where there's a certain group of people that think they are better and wiser than the rest of us. And then they can take care of all of us. But every one of those systems ends up in dictatorships and failure. And the people do not prosper. The individuals in that government prosper. They just found a different way for them to get rich by taking your money. So what it takes is rebuilding the confidence of the people that they don't fall for that line. And that's the story you're being fed today, that you're not smart enough. But the American founding fathers said we are. Anybody can have a better idea. And during that whole period of development of this country, all the creativity in the world came out of America, because we rewarded people for better ideas. Today we almost punish people for better ideas. If you do too good, we're going to tax you excessively. When I started in business, they took 70% on the federal level of our taxes. State took 5%, so they took 3 out of every $4 we made. We still did business and went along, just raised our prices. So they were the ones who paid the bill. But it was hard to make any money. But that was just a concept that we do not want to reward achievement. We do not want to award doctors who spend 8 years in college or 4 years in undergrad and 4 years in grad, and 2 years in interning and 4 more years in specialty, and they're $250,000 in debt, but damn them if they get too much money. I think we underpay most of our doctors, considering the price they paid to get there, the debt they came with to practice what they do. But you would think they were evil people instead of achieving people at the highest level. So you got to watch and fight against this concept that we do not want to reward achievement. I know there are a lot of greedy and cheating people, but we got a lot of that we got to clean up in medicine and in everything else. It's in government as well. The failure that we have economically isn't because somebody made too much money. You know, the failure is because somebody tried to help people get a lot of things without paying for them. And that started at the government level, that we're going to give these things to you. And so it starts to a great extent with the government, not with the bankers You know, you got to remember where to point the fingers here a little bit. But we're all a little greedy. So we're all sinners. And so we have to find ways to compensate and adjust and take care of that as best we can. But don't entrust any one group of people to make decisions for your life. But that means we've got to build up the confidence of the others. And I have got, you know, we've had millions and millions of people in our Amway business. Most of them didn't do it. They didn't succeed at it. Most of them didn't work at it either. But that's neither here nor there. Almost all of them, as I meet them around the world, say, no, I didn't do anything with Amway, but I learned something there that set me up for the rest of my life in how to do things and accomplish them. So a lot of times the people that you are seeing and working with may never carry through with you. But the things you change with in their lives carry them to advance in other things they do in their life. So I meet people like that every day. I said, I'm a better person because I was in Amway. Well, that's good. If all the people who failed in Amway had a good experience and have improved their lives and who they are, then I've done a good job, even though they aren't with me. That's my responsibility, to make sure if they work with me, when they leave, they at least have had a good experience that advances them down the road. You know, I was just thinking of the other question. Sometimes, you know, people aren't going to do it just because you're in it. You are the hindrance. You don't mean to be, but they are too close to you sometimes. And they'll get away from you and go into something else and do good. But they might be thinking about you all the time. I don't have any answers for that, but that's my two-bit theory on it.
DeVos, in building up your business, as you started growing, you needed to depend on key people to help you grow. How did you discern the right people to bring on board?
Well, as soon as you say that, I think of the one I made mistakes on, hiring. Now that's wrong, because that's not answering your question. The biggest mistakes we made in that regard were not getting rid of those so-called good people when they weren't living up to what we had hoped to have them do. The fear of firing them, partly because they're friends. If they weren't friends when you hired them, they're friends now, and you've been with them for years in your business, and then you just can't fire them. You're too good friend of them now. At a time of when Amway was in trouble and business was bad and down, and we were fighting this Canadian thing, and we hired a new guy who knew how to run a business. He helped us solve the other problem. And I said to him one day, "You think you can run a business?" He said, "Oh, probably." He had run a few of them. So he went gave him an office, and next thing I know, he had white paper all over the walls, and he had diagrams of all the management and staff. He said, "Well, we'll get started here. This whole layer we'll get rid of." He said, "If they were any good, they wouldn't let this happen to you." So he got rid of the top five guys. Well, these are all good friends of ours by this time. They've been with us for 20 years, you know. He said, "We'll just clean that out." He said, "I think we can take care of the next layer too." I mean, he did what we had not the guts to do, which was make the best decisions you can on hiring people, screen them carefully. We had how I did it was we had a consultant, and he would sit down with a person for a day or two and just talk to them about their life, not necessarily their qualifications or anything, but tell me about your life. And he would trace their life from every step. When he said, "There's a little gap in here of a year. What happened in that year?" That year kind of got slid by, and "Oh, well, I had a little problem over here." And so, "Oh, okay. Well, that's all right." But see, he did the kind of in-depth that when you're running a business and working to make the business pay money and make some money, you don't have time to do that. So don't be afraid to get somebody to help you a little bit. And maybe you hire somebody temporarily, maybe you bring on an employment agency, but somebody who will do the careful screening you need. If you're going to trust somebody with a lot of money to handle your finance department or things like that, you may have to go through several people to get there. because it's a tough time. It's a tough deal to find a person who can be an effective manager. They're there, but you got to dig for them. And after they've been around you too long, sometimes they think they're you, and they're entitled to what you have. Now, I've had friends like that, and I had a guy who sold me my boats for a while, and pretty soon he thought because he was dealing with people who had big boats that he ought to live like the people who had big boats, and pretty soon you'd have to bail him out of jail because he was misappropriating funds. It was no problem. He just grew up with a high level of people, and he himself felt like he should live at that level. Well, he wasn't living at that level. But that's what happens to your people when sometimes you have them around too long. So look over your staff, be careful. I have no simple answers for it, but don't be afraid to change. Maybe it's the best advice I can give you. If you have any questions, most of the people I've had to terminate that I worried about and felt sick about, and how am I going to tell them, and what's going to happen to their family, and then finally you do it. And then you clean out their desk, tell them to clean out their desk, and then you find out all the junk that's in their desk was work they never did. I had one guy who I had complaints from people. Said, "Well, he doesn't answer the mail. I send letters, I never get answered." Well, we finally, the desk was so packed with it, you couldn't open the drawers. There were so many unanswered letters. He was a nice guy. He just couldn't get the job done. But most of the people that I've terminated, they were a lot worse than I thought they were when I terminated them. I was too late. Yes?
Mr. DeVos, I'm an Orlando Magic season ticket holder.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Always want to personally thank you for your stewardship in our community.
Thank you.
And I think we can go undefeated this year, don't you?
Well, I've had that thought.
But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what it's like to be a leader in a community and the responsibility you have as the Magic owner in the Orlando community.
He wants to know about Orlando and how we treat ourselves and how we get into that game, and how do we handle the responsibilities that come with owning a team. When we bought the team, we had a family meeting, and the first thing that came to us was to buy a baseball team and bring it to Orlando. The National League was opening it up, and it ended up that it went to Miami, and the Marlins were formed by Huizinga. Oddly enough, Huizinga, you say down here, he owned the Magic. I mean, he owned the Marlins, and he owned the Dolphins until recently. He and I both dropped out of the same college. We both came out of the same church. And one day I said that, and he said, no. He said, I got kicked out. And the college president would go around and say, come to our college. We got 2 billionaires who got dropped out of here, he said. The best school to drop out of there is. But I called him after he got the franchise, and I said, Wayne, I said, congratulations. He said, why don't you be my partner? I said, no, I think not, Pace. I'm just going to pass on it, Wayne. You just enjoy it. And you got it. No, he said, I think you won. But I said, we'll see. We didn't get that. But because of that, Pat Williams, who was the guy doing all this, was in time as the general manager of the team, and the owner was in financial trouble, and so he called up, and the lawyers did, and asked if we would meet quietly and talk to him, and so we bought the team. But the family met. And on decisions like that, it was with our 3 boys and daughter, and we would talk about these things and whether we should invest that money in a business that doesn't make any money. A lot of people think you make a lot of money when you have a team like that. You don't make any money. We have never taken a dime out of Orlando. Now, our franchise is worth a lot more money. That's like buying a wonderful big house, and you say you're going to make a lot of money because it's going to increase in value. But it doesn't increase in value until you sell it. You don't make a dime until you get rid of it. And that's the way it is with the Orlando Magic. So you have to accept the fact that it's a real commitment, without any money coming out, but an asset that grows. So the $80 million we paid is now probably worth $500 million, but that's been 18 years. And so when you get all through looking at it, it's probably a decent investment, but not great. But it's been a lot of fun. So we didn't buy it to make money. We bought it because we wanted to have an impact in a different community. We talked about it. We said, we have the Amway world, and we speak to a lot of people every day. Maybe if we owned a ball team, we could talk to some young guys and we could pass on our faith and our hope and our positive belief for them. And they could have passed it on to other young people. And that's why we bought the team. And we also felt that we could have a positive impact on a community for good. So they would learn those good phrases and faith subjects and so forth. So that's why we bought the team. I think we've done pretty well in the community and with our ball players. Monday night, they'll all be over to my house here. I live right down the road here in Alabama. And all the team comes in, and I will talk to them on 3 subjects. First of all, I want to get to know them, so we have time to personally visit, because we got 4 or 5 new guys. I talk to them about our faith. We're the only owners that have their ball players over that I know of. Or maybe somebody does, but we do it because we want them to know what we believe in. We want to testify to them. They said, we want you to know your owner, we want you to know what we believe, and if you ever want to talk about it, we're here. Just like you were talking about over there, right? I tell them what I believe, and if they want to know more, talk to me. And sometimes we do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get in trouble, and then we have to deal with them. Usually, we've had good ball players. And that's partly because we won't take bad ball players. If they have had a bad track record, we won't take them. If they've been in trouble, I'm not going to hire them. I don't need to bring any trouble into a situation. So my wife said, we will not bring that person into Orlando. We don't want that kind of person around our town. We don't live there, but it's still our town. We have 3 places we feel responsible to support and give to, Orlando being one. And so the joy has come with the fact that we've been able to have an influence for good in the community through our ball players. And it's a great honor to own a team. At one time I thought of selling the team, and I said, no, I think I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it because it's a family builder. We have 16 grandchildren, 4 children. And when you're in a championship race like we were last year, all the grandkids are there, and they are from 27 to 7. But every game we played at home, all the kids were there, all flying in. We'd have at least 4 or 5 of our airplanes all arrived to bring the family in to be with the team. So holding a family together to teach them these values, try to hold up to their values, and we have family meetings, council meetings as we call them, with our grandchildren, at least high school age, to teach them their responsibilities. They are in a wealth family, but they've got to be responsible and be a giver. And so the team holds us in place to try and help us be a better and a more responsible family as the years to go. So that's why we have a team, and that's the joy of it. And it's fun.
We got time for one more. Who's going to get the last lucky question in? All right, we got 2 more.
Good.
Okay. We'll let the lady go first.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. DeVos.
Hi.
You've talked about family quite a bit, and your wife quite a bit, and your grandchildren. I was wondering if you could talk about the importance of the relationship with your wife, the relationship with your family, and how that's integrated into your business, and really how the 2 have married.
And what?
How the 2 have married, your business and your family life.
Well, Helen and I have been married 56 years. So I'll tell you the secret to doing that. Live long enough. You know, there are a lot of marriages would survive if they lived longer, you know. It isn't always because we were so good or everything worked so perfectly. I have a wonderful, loving wife and forgiving wife who deals with me very well, keeps me humble, and that's important. Who, when we were running around building a business, who was always home with these kids and guiding them and bringing them up and teaching them a faith and all the good things a good mother does. So give credit to her entirely for these children. What we did in our life was plan our vacations always before we put any business schedules down. The first thing would be we'd plan our winter vacation to Florida, and when our kids were little, and we'd come down here for a month, and we would just be together. We didn't do any business. We just played on the beach down here and played pickle and every other, throw the football around all day, and some of the neighbors got unhappy the way our passes went, but so that's how we did our life. And the birthdays and anniversaries always went on the calendar first. That kept our balance in our life of priorities. I told people we bought jet airplanes so we could come home on Friday night to be at the kids' football games, and that's true. Not only for us, but for our staff. And we do operate a fleet of 10 Gulfstreams, and we have 35 pilots. We fly a lot. But that's not just for us. That's so our staff can get home on the weekends as well. Because we have a worldwide business, we have people all over the world, and airplanes make it possible for us to have a worldwide business. But that also means we got to get our people home so they can have a decent family life. Our children all grew up in Christian schools. Not all, a couple of them went to public schools, which is all right. I grew up in a Christian school, my wife grew up in a Christian school, and we believe it was vital to us. We are major givers to our Christian schools because we believe it's a better atmosphere for them to grow up in. Action, I have a speech on 3 A's: action, attitude, and atmosphere. Decisions are made, action steps are taken based on your attitude. And your attitude is formed by your atmosphere. Who do you hang around with? I went to a Christian school, therefore I met a Christian guy. Therefore we were in business as Christian partners for our lifetime. And we could solve our problems together because we shared our faith together. That makes a difference in running a business, especially a partnership, which is filled with difficulties. I'd never recommend a partnership to anybody, and neither would he. But people say, well, you're a partner, I think I'll get a partner. Well, don't buy it, that's a bad deal. That only adds one more risk factor to your deal. That doesn't mean you don't need a partner. You need a partner to talk to and visit with and keep you on track and tell you when you're stupid and when your speech was bad, as well as when it was good. And she would do that too. She'd sit in the front row, and usually she'd go, and that's what Frank is doing now, I think. Knock it off. Anyway.
I'll let you go. We got one more.
Yeah, okay.
I promise with this man.
Rich, I just want to speak for, on behalf of, I'm a second generation MYRBO actually right now.
Wonderful.
And I want to speak, we actually have a few others on the table we found out.
Thank you.
You've made such an impact on my family. My family's been full-time in the Amway business for almost 40 years.
Really?
And that's one of the businesses now I'm building because of the principles that we were raised around. Because of the Christian principles through my church now, I attend Willow Creek Community Church, Sunlight Church, Whitewood.
Sure.
And my business partner today in a traditional business came because of that business as well. There's 2 questions I guess I have to ask for you. Number one is, I guess maybe it's kind of in that vein, what do you think for chapter 2 for the next 50 years? Will people like ourselves in our generation, what can we learn from the past to kind of bring that in this new model, this new business, this new world that meets the principles that built your company and our opportunity today? What do we need to bring out to the world so they can hear it through a new set of eyes and ears? And the second question is more of a selfish one is, are you willing to give the Selling America speech again? Because this world needs to hear it, let alone
I became, I'll talk about the speech in a minute. I've tried a few times, and I never could put it together with the same enthusiasm I had. I felt we had slipped, and I still feel that way. Now, partly that's getting older. I grew up right after that war, and we were so excited about America and what it could do. All this negative stuff you hear about what's wrong with our country, you know, it was always that way. There were always problems in the world. There were always people who didn't get to the doctors or couldn't pay their bills, and there were always poor and hungry people. And we always got to work to solve it. But the solution is not handouts. That is not a solution. That's a salve that helps, that delays it, but it will not solve the problem until the people who are living that way can change their style and get going and learn to be a better participant. Now, that's an easy thing to say and a very difficult thing to do. People talk about the poor. I understand, but I don't believe the poor are a constant group. They're a passing group. It's a stage you go through. You don't stay there. That's the difference. But there are a lot of people who think, well, we've got to take care of the poor, and they're always talking about the same group of people. They aren't the same group of people. That's a new bunch. That other crowd got smart and moved on. They got educated. They improved themselves, or they should have. That's the difference. You see, I believe it's a passing parade, that they move on. And that's the philosophy we got to teach people. That just because you were born poor doesn't mean you stay poor. I was born poor. My father was unemployed for many years in the Depression. We had to move out of our house. When I hear people talk about that day, I said, I went through that. That's okay. We just move on. And in the midst of all of that stuff, my dad says, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And we were living in my grandmother's attic at that time. So it's the philosophy of the greatness of our country and the ability of people to improve themselves and move on. And it's that attitude that is prevailing in our country today. Many people say, well, you're helpless and government's got to help you. Government can help you, but it can't solve the problem. The problem is making the people able. Now that means education, opportunities of education, equality of opportunity, open doors. You know, when he started Amway, he said, anybody can come in. We finally had to have a law, you got to be 18, okay? But we had a lot of people start selling earlier than that, because people were in, they wanted their kids to start. So today, that's the limitation. But we don't care what your education. I've had people say to me, we ought to have surveys and studies of the successful people, so when we recruit people, we only recruit those kind. Jay and I said, no way, we don't want to know that. Because if we know that, we'll forget all the others who don't have all those so-called good qualifications. Our business is to pick people up from where they are and help them move on. And that's my philosophy for the country. Move on. Pass it on. Move up. And as long as we had that in this country, we kept solving problems and finding better ways. And it's the next generation that's coming up that's going to pick our country up again and do better and bigger things. But we got to have faith in them. And we got to encourage them. Because if they're in that atmosphere of that negative world, then they won't have the courage to keep going. And you and I have got to help them with that atmosphere. So I grew up in a good atmosphere. Even though we were poor, it was still a good atmosphere. And you and I have got to work to create a better atmosphere. Anyway, 50 years in the Amway business, I summed it up when I made a 50-year speech for all of our very top people. We had it in Las Vegas, and Amway has certain founding pillars, we called them. But they were always freedom, family, hope, and reward. People are worthy of what they are, and they should be rewarded properly. They should have hope always that they can improve and do better, and hope for their children. The family aspect is an important aspect because that's what creates the atmosphere. As you're in a family situation, an atmosphere of conducive to believing in each other. But faith is the first one that isn't in our pillars, but I use it in the speech because I thought faith was before freedom, and I got them mixed up. And I had all my speech prepared around faith. And that's because one of our top people in Japan said to me one day, what does your faith have to do with your business? Wasn't that interesting? Nobody ever asked me that. But years before that, a gentleman had, in fact, W.R. Grace and Company had come in and tried to buy us. They offered us millions of dollars, and it would have been time to take your money and run. But we said, we don't want to sell. We want a business of our own. You know, it doesn't matter just getting the money and running. It's a matter of having the fun of running it. And so we dismissed it and said, we're not for sale. We just want to know what somebody thought we were worth. Well, the guy says, if you don't want to sell, I'm going to tell you, we're going to start a company and we're going to compete with you, and we're going to take you on if you don't sell. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go out in the back room a minute and get the kit. I want you to have the Amway sales kit so you know how we do it. The plan's in there. And follow the plan and you'll be okay. And they went off. It was Grace Chemical Company, big company, airline shipping company. And they started a company out of Cincinnati. 3 years later, they went broke and closed it up. And I met Mr. Grace one day and I said, hey, Mr. Grace, what happened to your competing company to ours, your Grace Home Products Company? He said, you know damn well what happened. I said, well, I'd heard there were some problems. Well, he said, we closed it up. I said, I don't know why. I gave you a kit. Everything was in it. He poked his hand in my chest and says, young man, you left something out. Yes, I did. And it isn't the plan. It's the people. It's the faith of the people in themselves that builds the plan. That's what makes any business go. It's not just the system. And so we are in the business of helping people respect themselves and do everything they can to improve themselves and to teach others how to do it. That's the key of our sponsoring system. But if I get all through it, I would put it this way to you, as I did to them. It all comes down to this. You first and me second in the operation of your business. You first and then me. If I take good care of my customer and they do well, then I do well. But I don't do well at their expense. If they got a bad deal and I made a lot of money on it, it's a bad deal for me. And that's partly what went wrong in your industry, in the real estate business and banking business. It all got about what we could get, but to H with the customer. Or the poor person who bought the house that they couldn't afford to buy, and they were overextended and they couldn't pay the payments, and bankers all knew it, and everybody knew it. But they did it anyway. They got it backwards. And we got to get our country back straightened out again, where we got to continue to serve others and put their interests above our own, and then we'll be just fine. And we will prosper, and the Lord will bless us. That's biblical stuff. And so we don't do it perfectly. But that's still the dream and the goal. And I said, if we do it right, and we keep worrying about the distributors we bring in, if they do well, then we'll do well. And then we'll be around another 50 years. And if we don't do those things in this country, we may not be around another 50 years. It all happened very quickly when Mao came in. It all happened very quickly when Hitler came in. And when the Japanese, when you wake up, were marching all over China and in Indonesia and all over the place. We forgot all that part of the world. It wasn't until I got over and done business over there I realized that the Japanese had invaded all of those territories and were conquering all that. They divided up the world, you know that. Japanese were going to get the Pacific, and Russia and Germany were going to divide up Europe, and Germany was going to get the United States, and Russia was going to get the underbelly of Europe, and they had it all cut out. And they were underway doing just that, militarily and otherwise. And we have people in this continent and around us close that think that that's the way they ought to do it. You can see it in, I think it's Honduras, where they want to change the law so the guy can stay in power forever. Yeah. You see it with Chavez, right around the corner in Venezuela. You know, these are things that are occurring in your lifetime, right in your backyard. And sometimes our country seems indifferent to them. But if we didn't have some strong presidents like Kennedy at the time of when Russia was playing Tootsie with Cuba, that they weren't exactly on our doorstep 50 years ago. And that's why when we started Amway, we called it Amway. And that's why we started preaching and talking about the American way and about free enterprise, and that this company was going to fight for it and stand up for it. And that's why my first speech was about the greatness of America and how much better it was in those societies that did not have freedom, nor the right to speak, nor the right to worship. There's still only one television channel in Russia that allows religion, and that's Bob Schuler's network. He got that on there years ago. But there are no others, even now. So you're in a war that is adverse to what we stand for because of the need for power. All you got to do is look at all of Africa. And we just started a new company in Africa. We're going to do a test in there. We want to get in there and give them some good stuff. Show them how to help themselves. There's some great progress being made. But it's not going to be made by the Americans just sending money over there. It's going to be made by the people in Africa taking charge of their life. They've got great natural resources. They just got to take charge. And they are living with some very bad historical leadership. That whenever there's any prosperity made or any oil found, it doesn't seem to end up in the country improving. It all disappears. And that can happen here just as well. So join me in our great war to protect our country. It's the best in the world. It's the most prosperous in the world, and it's the only system we know of in the world that has made individual people more prosperous and successful. I don't know of any other system that does it, but we have to fight to protect it. So we have good cheer. We're here. We can do it. We're standing up for it. We're waking up to it. But a lot of you didn't live through a war, and that all has slid by us. But it is still near us. But we are still able to change it. We still have free elections. And we have the right to choose people. It's not a put down to Obama or anybody. It's just, this is a country built on that in and out. We move in and out of that phasing all the time. It's always because we want to help the poor people. I mean, it's well-intentioned. But it ends up in taking from those who do produce and giving it to others as if that will make them better. It will not make them better until they take charge of their lives. That's our big duty. You're all in that business of doing that. So I want to thank you for letting me stand up here all this time. See you guys.